Good morning. P10X Daily Show went live on Instagram earlier and also on Facebook, but apparently the Facebook stream did not actually go live. So we will try this again to make sure all of those of you out here on Facebook can see this. So welcome to Q&A Monday. I'll be your host, Alan, serving as CEO of ICE, faculty member for our fitness athlete division, as well as our modern management of the older adult division. Here on Q&A Monday, answering viewer questions. We got a question about knee sleeves, knee wraps, and kind of all the gear that we see in the gym. Before we get started, don't forget, if you are interested in sort of this type of thing, dealing with the fitness athlete, the CrossFitter, Olympic weightlifter, the powerlifter, you can catch Mitch Babcock up in Vancouver this weekend for a Fitness Athlete Live course with our friends at Amp Physio. Next weekend, you can catch us in Vancouver again for Modern Management of the Older Adult. Dustin, Christina, and myself will be up there. Christina will be out on Victoria Island. Dustin and I will be downtown Vancouver, and we'll be teaching the course to two groups of physios in the same spot with some two-way web conferencing, and then we'll be running our labs in both locations as well. So pretty cool opportunity to reach a whole bunch of physios out there in British Columbia over the next 2 weeks. And then March 7th, you can catch Modern Management of the Older Adult again down in Crown Point, Indiana. Dustin, Jeff Musgrave, our friend Guillermo, and myself will be down there. And in that same weekend, if you're out on the West Coast, you can catch Total Spine Thrust Manipulation with Justin Dunaway in his home turf there in Portland. So that's what's coming up the next couple weeks. So let's get into it. We had a question this past week from Sarah Grace on Instagram that said, what is going on with knee sleeves, knee wraps? What's the difference? Is it evidence supported? And that kind of brings us to this larger question of like, what is all this gear we see with folks in the gym, whether it's powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, CrossFit, what is all this stuff on their knees, belts, wraps, grips, whips, chains, yo-yos, the whole 9 yard. What is all this stuff that folks are carrying around in a bag? So let's get into knee stuff first. So this is not a knee sleeve. This is a shin guard. So shin guard for things like box jumps, it's padded. Protect your shin from a box jump. If you biff it on a box jump so you don't tear your shin up. Also it can be worn for climbing a rope so you don't burn your leg up with the rope. Imagine now cut in half, a little bit thicker, and now this becomes a knee sleeve that goes up and over your knee. We also have knee wraps. Think of like a heavy-duty ACE bandage wrapped around your knee, really stabilizing the knee. What does the research say? There's a paper that came out at the end of last year that looked at the kinematics of sleeves and wraps compared to nothing. Found that both sleeves and wraps create a lot of knee stability. They reduce the muscular effort of the knee muscles during a squat. So much so that they recommend that you don't train with wraps on. Wraps seem to stabilize and reduce the muscular effort of the leg muscles so much that it doesn't actually produce a training effect. So maybe we're only wearing knee wraps during a competition. Maybe we're a powerlifter and we're maxing out our back squat in a competition at a meet. Maybe that's when we're wearing wraps, but we're not training with wraps on. And so if you're on Instagram and you're watching a lot of like Olympic weightlifters and powerlifters like break world records, you'll see they have their knees wrapped up super tight. The folks that are snatching 500 pounds and squatting 1,000 pounds have their knees wrapped up pretty tight. But day to day, we want to be training maybe with knee sleeves on. What's the effect that they have? We know that the deep squat is safer than a quarter squat or a parallel squat, because as we squat down, the back of our thigh actually contacts our calf, and that reduces the load on the knee joint and on the leg muscles, and we almost kind of sometimes get a little bounce. Out of the bottom is you can think of your hamstring bouncing off your calf. That's actually what makes a deep squat safer and less injurious on the knee than a partial range of motion squat. And so the knee wrap kind of artificially makes your thigh and calf thicker because it's a thick wrap, and so you have that contact happen sooner, and therefore you can lift a little bit more weight. You also have the stability of just having your knee with this compressive sleeve on it, which maybe helps with patellofemoral tracking a little bit better. But again, the knee wrap does that to such an effect that it actually reduces how much your muscles work and is ideally not what you're going to be wearing day to day with training. But you'll see in the CrossFit gym, when we're squatting, when we are doing a lot of high volume squatting, even at low loads, so think of something like a wall ball, even though it's only 20 pounds, if we're doing 100, 150, 200 wall balls, folks will have their knee sleeves on just to get that bounce effect, and just to kind of keep the knee nice and compressed. I also see them used when we do lunges. We do a lot of lunges in CrossFit, and so when folks are doing walking lunges, full range of motion, that knee slamming on the ground, it's nice to have the knee sleeves on, to protect the knee from just getting scuffed up and kind of bruised and bloody from slamming the knee on the ground so many times. I can't wear knee sleeves or knee wraps because my calves are too big, so I can't actually tell you how they feel or if I notice a difference with them on or with them off. But a lot of folks get used to training squats and high volume stuff with knee sleeves on. I've never personally worn them, but that's the effect. So I'll post a link to that paper in the comments here afterwards. But that's shin guards, knee sleeves, knee wraps. Let's go to grips. So we see these with gymnasts. Obviously these are gymnastic grips, but we also see these with CrossFitters. This is a 3-hole grip, obviously for your fingers, and it's carbon fiber. What do these do? These protect your hands when you're up on the pull-up bar when you're doing high volume stuff. So when folks first start out, they're not really doing enough volume to really scuff their hands up like that. You can see my hands are kind of beat up after some muscle ups yesterday and a bunch of toes to bar today. These help with that, theoretically. Especially under higher volume, we're thinking about we're doing 50 reps, 75 reps, 100 plus reps up on the pull-up bar. They protect your hands. They also help you just keep your grip up there. As you're going through a workout, you're sweaty, the bar is kind of wet with your sweat. You don't want to slip off the bar, so these help with keeping your hands on the bar a little bit better. What we don't want to see with these is folks using this in place of using their shoulder muscles and their wrist muscles and their grip strength. Folks, especially when tired, have the tendency to hang from the grip here, and then they start to develop wrist pain, and they also bottom out in the shoulder on their gymnastics movements because they're just not active in the shoulder and wrist. They start to develop wrist and shoulder pain because they're hanging from the grips. So just like knee sleeves don't replace using your leg muscles, grips don't replace using your actual grip strength and activating your shoulders. So still make sure folks have their thumb wrapped around the bar. They're not just hanging by their fingertips and using the Velcro on the grip to replace their grip strength and ending up with a buggy wrist or a buggy shoulder down the road. All different types of varieties: carbon fiber, leather, cloth, 2-hole, 3-hole, no holes, traditional gymnastic grips without holes where you just kind of wrap around the bar versus putting your fingers through. Folks have different styles they like. I like to use these and then not use the finger holes. I like the carbon fiber, but folks will typically have a pair of these after they've been doing CrossFit for a while to protect their hands. So you'll see those on folks' wrists in a workout with a higher volume gymnastic movement up on the bar. So that's grips. Let's finish by talking about belts. So you should know that in the research, belts are a dead horse, right? Again and again and again, when folks are wearing a belt and they look at EMG analysis, they look at what's going on in the spine. With a belt on, you can produce more intra-abdominal pressure, you can reduce compression on the spine, you can overall produce a more stable spine, and oh, by the way, lift more weight with a belt on than without a belt on. So there are folks who say you should never wear a belt, you should never train with a belt, belts make you weak. Not true at all in the literature. What we don't want to see with belts is have folks not still go through their breathing and bracing sequence to lock down their spine and get their back tight and brace their abdominal cavity and think that slapping a belt on replaces that. They still need to do that. It actually is a little bit easier when folks wear a belt because you can see if they're doing it or not. If they slap a belt on, you can see them push out against that belt, kind of lock down their abdominal cavity and spine, and see that they have a really tight brace going on by pushing out against the belt. You can kind of see their skin stick out over top and underneath. That tells you as a coach or as a PT watching them that they are still bracing their core with that belt versus without. But if we're going for max lifts, if we're going for higher volume, maybe at low to moderate loads, it's okay to use a belt. You're going to be able to lift more weight and tolerate more volume with a belt than without. Looking at belts, a lot of different types. We have the traditional soft belt A million different companies make these. You get them at the sporting goods store, you can get them at Walmart or whatever. A lot of us are familiar with this. It's just a Velcro cloth belt, provides a little bit of support. You see folks in the Globo gym doing bicep curls wearing this belt for some reason, right? You see a lot of folks with that belt on in the gym doing not a lot of stuff, sometimes even sitting down wearing that belt doing different stuff. So those belts are very, 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 very common. Then we move on to something with a little bit more support. One of these leather belts that has kind of this two-prong latch mechanism that provides more support than the cloth belt. We see power lifters wearing those. We see folks who are maybe a little bit more competitive, a little bit more serious, maybe actually doing a functional movement like a deadlift or a squat, wearing those belts. That gives a little bit more support. The leather is a little bit stiffer. The latching mechanism is a little bit stiffer than just that Velcro with the cloth belt. And then we get to the king of belts, which is a lever belt. So very thick leather, very, very thick leather. And then we have, let's see if I can show it here. We have this latching mechanism here where now we pull this lever and cinch that belt shut. That provides a lot of stability, really hard leather, no give in this leather, combined with the lever latch really locks the core and the spine down. If you've ever worn one of those, you feel how much immediately, how much support it gives you. Really easy to breathe and brace against that because it has no give. You can really create a nice tight core brace with a lever belt. You see folks that are deadlifting and squatting super heavy, maybe maxing out, maybe those breaking world records with that lever belt on. They're not very comfortable. I would not wear one in a high volume workout. If we're doing, a workout like Diane 21-15-9 deadlifts and handstand push-ups, would not be wearing my lever belt, even though that's a higher volume, moderate weight deadlift. It's just very uncomfortable. It really does lock your trunk and core down. It's not comfortable to bend over a lot with or do anything else than basically deadlift and squat with. But for max lifting, squatting, deadlifting, you'll see folks with those lever belts. Maybe during a traditional Metcon or just regular training with squatting or deadlifting, you'll see folks wear one of those cloth belts or leather belts. But again, in the literature, overwhelmingly, you'll lift more weight with a more stable spine and more intra-abdominal pressure created with a belt. We do need to consider those with pressure issues. So pregnant moms, postpartum moms, maybe folks we don't want creating a lot of pressure, then maybe we're not using a belt. Maybe we're working at low loads, low volume, with really focusing on pressure management and not using that belt, especially in place of a tight core brace. So keep that in mind. We do need to be aware of those folks with pressure management issues. So that's it. We didn't touch shoes at all. We could have a whole episode on shoes, and we actually will have a whole episode on shoes on Friday. We'll talk about kind of CrossFit style training shoes. We'll talk about Olympic weightlifting shoes, powerlifting shoes, and we'll talk about the importance of heel drop, heel lift for runners on Friday. So we'll dedicate an entire episode to just different types of training shoes on Friday. So Jason and Megan a couple weeks ago on Fitness Athlete Friday talked about the anatomy of a running shoe. We'll talk about the anatomy of all the other types of shoes you might see outside of running. So come back Friday for that. Tomorrow, we'll continue our overhead athlete series that we started last week. Last week, we looked at some manual therapy techniques for the overhead athlete. Tomorrow, we'll get into some mobility and strength exercises and home programs for the overhead athlete. So tune in tomorrow. Other than that, that's all I've got for you. Get out there. Have a great Monday. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.